This conference will now be recorded.
Go. Call the April 19th, 2023 APC public hearing to order. First order of business. First of all, Mr. Hiddle, are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Mr. Burns, roll, please.
Jackson Bogan.
Here.
Larry Leverance.
Here.
Carla Snodgrass. Gary Schroeder.
Here.
Jerry Reynolds.
Here.
Greg Jones. Here. Bob Metzger. Here. Diana Looper. Here. Vicki Pearl. Here. Michelle Dennis. Here. Tom Murtaugh. Present. Perry Brown. Here. Tracy Brown.
Present.
Jason Demkowski.
Here.
Lisa Dullum. Here. Kathy Parker. Here. Jody Hamilton. Jody Hamilton. Quorum present.
Thank you, sir. Briefing session.
Thank you. Case Z-2880, Don Kohler, rezoning from R1U to NBU, is requested a continuance to the May 17th APC public hearing agenda. All other cases are set to go forward tonight.
Thank you. Approval of the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from the March 15th, 2023 public hearing as submitted.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. New business, have none, I don't think. And for the public hearing, let me read our rules for our public hearing. For those unfamiliar with our procedures, the Commission would like you to know the following. When we hear a request to subdivide land, we're only concerned as to whether the actual drawing showing the division into lots meets the technical requirements of our ordinance. The question of appropriateness has already been determined. Anyone wishing to make comments or provide us with information regarding any subdivision petitions will be given an opportunity to do so. When we are hearing a request for a change in zoning, we are trying to determine if the new zone being requested and the uses allowed in that zone are appropriate to that property and supported by the comprehensive plan. With each case being heard, our staff will present its report. Then the person requesting the rezone will be given an opportunity to speak. Following that, those of you wishing to speak in favor of the rezone will be recognized, and those of you who wish to oppose it will have a turn. This will be your only time to speak. The person requesting the action will be allowed a rebuttal. Plan Commission members will then ask questions and finally vote. Please limit your statements to no more than 5 minutes. We ask that you do not repeat what others before you have already said. We are a 17-member body, and a majority of 17 is 9. Regardless of how many commissioners are actually present, at least 9 votes in favor or 9 votes against are required for our action to be official. If fewer than 9 of us agree to either approve or disapprove an action, that case must be heard again next month. Our vote on a request to subdivide is final. Our vote on a request to rezone serves as a recommendation to the appropriate city council, town council, or county commissioners, who must ultimately decide on changes in zoning. When addressing the commission, please state your name and address for the record. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. If you need to make a call, please step out of the room before using your phone. All exhibits presented to the commission become the property of the commission.
I move that there be incorporated in the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Plan Commission, the application and all documents filed therewith, the staff report, and recommendations on the applications to be heard this evening in responses from the checkpoint agencies.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I'm ready to hear the continuance.
I move to continue Z 2880 Don Kohler R1 to NBU to the May 17th, 2023 ABC public hearing.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Subdivisions.
I move to hear and vote on S 5122 Winding Creek subdivision, a replat of Lot 37, minor sketch.
I second.
This is a replat of Lot 237 in Winding Creek. The petitioner would like to replat in order to relocate some easements and add additional land to existing unbuilt property in Winding Creek. As you can see here, this will be the new layout. The existing easement runs parallel along the eastern back property line. The petitioner has already requested the vacation of that, and that is standard recommendations of approval with standard commitments on that.
Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative like to make a presentation? Do we have a petitioner present?
Sorry, I thought the engineer or surveyor was going to be here. Kevin Riley representing the petitioner. We agree with the staff's report and request your approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to comment on this petition? Any questions from the commission? Okay, you have a white ballot.
Yeah, no bonding, that's what I was.
We're always last.
Wait to see what other people do.
Yeah.
We have a unanimous ballot for approval.
Thank you, Ryan.
I move to hear and vote on S 5123 Arbor Chase Section 6, Phase 2, major preliminary.
I second.
This case is for a major preliminary for 59 lots on 39 acres. It will connect Demar Way to Milgden. As you can see here, this is the northern piece. It will come down connecting to this portion, following and connecting to the existing Arbor Chase. Most significant thing is the first phase of the east-west collector is being built as part of this project that will connect Soldiers Home Road to Jaeger with standard subdivision recommendations on for the construction plans and final plat.
Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Good evening. Mike Wiley, Schneider Geomatics, 1281 Winchell Boulevard, West Lafayette. Staff's report really spelled out this is the next phase of Arbor Chase. The conditions are pretty standard. We've reviewed our agreement, and I'd be glad to ask her any questions you might have, or whichever way we go. Appreciate the vote.
And you're asking for bonding on this one, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Ryan Munden, Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier here on behalf of the petitioner as well. I do have one thing to add. The staff report references the construction of the first section of that east-west connection of Soldiers Home and Jaeger. The petitioner has had discussions with West Lafayette, and it is our understanding that they are okay with the construction plans showing radiuses only on that 3rd Street intersection. So we just wanted to confirm that that is acceptable. That would be just radiuses only on the construction plans. To the extent we need to add or amend a condition, we'd be fine with that, but we just want to clarify that point.
I'd ask if the city has a position. I know Aaron just- Aaron's over.
Where is Aaron? Does the city have a position on that? Chad.
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. We need to confirm with the Public Works Director on that question specifically.
Okay.
To answer Ryan's question, there would be no stub. They would just have the radiuses at that intersection. So we would not be building the stubs to nowhere primarily because they would go to nowhere and would essentially turn into parking lots.
I don't think we can take any action until we have Public Works agreement, so it might be worth it to table this to next
Petitioner
time.
would request that it be tabled.
Continuance.
Okay. So the request is to table this proposal
Go to exec? I think we, or no, this has,
To-
okay, it's a major. No.
to May?
Correct, May.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the motion before you is to table this one till May. Any questions, comments?
Have a motion?
I move that we continue this case to the May 15th, 2023 public hearing.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So,
I move to hear and vote on Z 2880, Don Kohler, R1U to NBU.
no.
Nope.
You
We'll
continue.
do that next month.
Okay, you're right. Thank you. Disregard. I move to hear and vote on Z 2882, Subtext Acquisitions LLC, Brant Stiles, Verb 2, Plan Development, R3W to PDRS.
I second.
Ready? Okay. We're here in kind of West Lafayette's near downtown neighborhood, kind of south of Wood Street. You may recall the Verve 1 project, which is presently under construction, which takes the half block bounded by Salisbury, the south of the half block, bounded by Salisbury Wood and Chauncey. That project is underway. This was sort of hinted at by them early on, that there was interest in, other sites, and they came to us with this proposal directly across the street, across Wood Street, next to the 202 South Chauncey project here, which is on PDRS. Their objective is to consolidate the remaining part of this block that's bounded by Wood, Salisbury, and a public alley, totaling just over an acre. As you can see, the 2 apartment buildings that are presently on site with a parking lot between them. The proposal is for a 153-unit apartment complex with 158 parking spaces. The spaces are in a 2-level underground parking garage beneath the project. So it's very similar in its kind of design elements to the Verve 1 project, but a little smaller in scale than that one. And there is no mixed-use component. It's strictly a residential project. We have a scattering of slides through here that the developer provided, but this area of the city is under the West Lafayette Downtown Plan, and which did call for buildings to step down from State Street as you move south. And this building is providing that. Obviously, we have the high rises up on State, and then falling to Verve 1, which I believe is 7 stories when it tops out, and then Verve 2 steps down another floor to 6. Here's the site plan. Project itself has kind of standard multifamily apartments inside the main building, but it also is incorporating townhouse walkout units on Salisbury, which we thought was a good design choice for this relatively quiet part of Salisbury Street. As we did with 202 South Chauncey, in dedicating alley right-of-way to widen these old city public alleys so the fire trucks can have a little more elbow room back there. This project is also dedicating the same amount of right-of-way, 2 feet on their side, to bring the total width of the alley to 14 feet from its original 12. So if the southern half of this block redevelops, there'll be opportunities to secure a little bit more. West Lafayette Fire seems to be comfortable with 15, 16 feet for their largest vehicles. So we're heading in the right direction. There is a slope, obviously, here. Which has made entry to the garage challenging from the alley. And because Wood Street and Salisbury Street are relatively low traffic compared to State or Chauncey, particularly the Salisbury section, the 2 parking levels are not connected internally from a vehicular point of view, but the lower level is going to be accessed off of Salisbury, and then the upper level from Wood. Another unique feature to this project is a private dog park that's going to be kind of sandwiched in this little triangle here for use of the residents. That's a welcome amenity for the community. Obviously, it's private just for this complex, but all the same, it's a welcome addition. The project sort of falls down the hill, and then again, the Salisbury frontage will have these kind of 2-story level walk-up townhomes with steps and so forth leading up to them. Get a better view of it there. So all in all, as we state in our report, the policy prescriptions of the downtown plan are being respected here, and it's in terms of its adding of some unique amenities, the dog park, for example. This is a welcome infill project for this area, so we're recommending conditional approval. The conditions are fairly standard for plan developments in this area. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Does petitioner or petitioner's representative like to make a presentation?
Ryan Munnin, Riley, Teeter, and Schreier here on behalf of the petitioner. There are 123 existing beds, so with this development, it will be a net increase of 362 beds. on this site. In addition to the amenities that Ryan described, there will be a pool on the amenity terrace between the east and west legs of the property. There's also 6,000 square feet of study space provided for, which is 7 study pods, 2 conference rooms, as well as open study space. We anticipate beginning construction in the fall of this year with delivery by the 25 school year. Since the project across the street is currently under construction, we think that the 2 construction phases overlapping will help with maybe a little more efficient construction on the 2. We're still working through MOT plans to make that work. We presented to the West Lafayette Purdue Joint Board yesterday and received no objections or negative feedback or comments. We concur with staff's report and recommendation, comply with the conditions, and we would respectfully request your approval. Be happy to answer any questions. I think we do have a couple. Here's a couple additional photographs or renderings. The upper right shows, the lower right shows the townhome style walkout units that Ryan referenced. So client's excited about another opportunity to develop a project in West Lafayette. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
My name is Don Teeter. I live at 2110 South 9th Street in Lafayette, and I own a piece of property at the corner of 224 South Chauncey, at the corner of Chauncey Street in the alley behind the property. And first of all, I want to say I think this is a great project. I think it'd be a nice addition for the neighborhood. I'm all for it. I just have one issue in that this alley, with my property, they park behind my apartment building, so they need access through this alley to my parking lot. And so I'm just asking that they don't close down the alley. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor? Anyone speaking in opposition to this petition? Any questions from the board? Okay. You have a yellow ballot.
Yeah, there was an error in the staff report. It said it had a wrong Z number, but what's on the agenda cover page is correct. It is Z2882, which was the call out. So. We have a unanimous ballot for approval.
Thank you, Ryan.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2883, PCM Properties, LLC. Mike Cates, Revive at Russell Plan Development, R3W to PDRS.
A second.
All right. Well, this site looks familiar. We have visited it before. This is a second rezone attempt on this fraternity house site in the heart of the campus neighborhood at 314 Russell. And so and on the corner of 4th Street and Russell. As you can see, we have a historic fraternity mansion there. It's been empty for a bit of time now. And the proposal is to repurpose it for multifamily use instead of fraternity use. The site plan shows up to 80 residential units with 6 surface parking spaces off of 4th Street. So this is definitely a purpose-built carless building to a certain extent, but given its location, it's very, very walkable to everywhere you'd want to get to in campus. So if you're not bringing a car to school or you've got some other place to go with it, then this might be the complex for you. So the goal here was to try to blend old with new, and to that end, the developer had essentially volunteered their property to go before the West Lafayette Historic Preservation Commission for scrutiny and for ultimately approval. The approval on this architectural scheme was granted by them earlier this year, and so that sort of freed staff up in terms of the PD process. We didn't necessarily have to scrutinize architecture like we normally would. We had help this time. So, but we're always in favor of, if you may recall, the previous project was much more modern, taking the whole thing down and reimagining what could be on this site. And so this is a much lesser project by comparison. Now they're trying to adapt to the old site and then add on to it in an appropriate way so that the old and new can kind of blend together seamlessly. So staff is pleased with their result, and we again recommend conditional approval. Conditions are all fairly standard here, so I think that's, yeah. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Does petitioner's representative like to make a presentation?
Ryan Munden, Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier here on behalf of the petitioner. I do have an additional handout that's the cover page of the preliminary plan that has the rendering, the front elevation, which I think does a little more justice than the drawing on the screen. As Ryan mentioned, this is an adaptive reuse project. The goal here was to preserve the 1930s era historic portion of the building, and then the new section that extends towards Russell Street would replace the 1960s non-historic portion of the building. That new portion would be 4 stories. Project would result in a net increase in beds by 37. We do have a contingency built into the PD in the event that 4th Street were to become pedestrian only. My understanding is that's part of Purdue's master plan, that street eventually become pedestrian only. So with that, we would lose the parking, so that is built into the PD if that were to ever happen. There's an interior bike room to accommodate 25 bikes with an exterior bike loop, 2 private study rooms. We anticipate construction this summer with delivery by the 24 school year. June will mark 1 year that we have been working with West Lafayette and with Historic Preservation to come up with a project that makes sense for this site. Barry at KJG was running out of letters in the alphabet for his plan sheets. We had so many iterations of this project. Some were swings and misses, and eventually this is where we've landed. We appreciate Aaron Easter and Peter Bunder and their collaboration with us over the last year in reaching the point that we have, and we think we have a project that has kind of paved the way for future adaptive reuse projects in Tippecanoe County. We all learned a lot along the way, and we're certainly excited. I'm personally proud of the project that we have. As Ryan mentioned, in February, we presented to the Historic Preservation Commission and received a certificate of appropriateness for this design. That vote was unanimous. We presented the project to the Purdue-West Lafayette Joint Board yesterday, received no objections or negative comments or feedback. With that, we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval. We concur with staff's report and recommendation. We'll comply with conditions. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Good evening. My name is Peter Bunder, and I live at 701 North Chauncey Avenue in West Lafayette. I'm president of the West Lafayette City Council, and I represent the council on the city's Historic Commission. I am here tonight to support the project that you have before you. It is so exciting when a plan finally comes together. It only took a year or more for this to happen. Let me express my appreciation both to Mike Gates and Ryan Munden for working with us over this period of time. I'd also like to thank the president of the West Lafayette Historic Preservation Commission, Aaron Thompson, for all of his hard work. This is the first adaptive reuse we have done on this scale, and we believe it demonstrates our interest both in preserving the collegiate Gothic building that is original to the property, while allowing the developer to add more beds to Purdue University, which is something we are also interested in doing. So I hope that you will vote to approve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Hello, my name is Kieran McCormick. I am a graduating senior at Purdue University. I'm actually here to represent ATO for the Gamma Omicron chapter. I am mainly here, I live at 611 Evergreen Street currently. I have with me a series of leases and correspondences between our chapter and PCM property throughout the years before this took place in terms of us leaving the property. So I have a timeline of events set up here, whereas our original master lease, which was at $345,000 per year at a 3% increase for 3 years, which was $366,000 in the final year, was to be expired on July 22nd, 2020. So one Michael Cates through PCM refused to talk with us enough in time until come July 16th, 2020, where he reached out to our executive board and sent them a lease that was set for starting on the 23rd. That would be $435K for 5 years at a 10% annual increase, which would be $637,000 or a 170% increase in rent from the end of the last term of the previous lease to the last term of the current lease. And he said that we would have to sign it by the next day in order to maintain the property. So, like reasonable individuals, our organization decided not to sign it because that is an overly exorbitant amount of price, and it's a 170% increase, which we could not do. So we reached out to our nationals, our FSCL advisors, and our board of trustees, and they all tried to reach out to PCM Properties to try to sort of mediate and strike a deal in some way. And he refused to talk to anyone except for our undergraduate members. He only wanted to talk to our president and our treasurer, and had no idea with talking to anyone else. So, on July 23rd, 2020, which is the day that the new lease was supposed to take up, that last lease had just passed off. Our members of our executive board went and met with Mr. Cates in person. Instead, he gave us a second lease, which I have all of these if you'd like me to hand these to you guys, if you'd like to see them as well. They were able to negotiate a second lease, but it's still not anywhere near enough. His second attempt was still $435, but it was for 3 years with a 5.3 annual increase, which is still higher than inflation and higher than it would be for that property. So this comes out to a 130% increase rather than 170 this time, which still isn't great. So our executive board members were notified by PCM that they would walk away from us if we didn't sign that lease on the spot. So we decided it was too expensive for us as a chapter and wouldn't go with the extortion that we were under being pushed. So we moved on. So we emailed PCM in the next 2 days or so, asking for individual leases for our members, seeing as how the property would stay barren, basically, by no one living in it for that time, for the next year. And throughout that year, we could hopefully negotiate a better lease for our organization with them, seeing as how this was the home of our fraternity from, I believe it was 1920 until 2021. So on July 30th, in response to this, which in that email we mentioned that through this whole thing and seeing that it was unlikely that we'd be able to reach an agreement this time, a bunch of our members went and found apartments and other places to live, seeing as how this was in the middle of the summer and there was no time left to find somewhere else to live. So we mentioned in this email that we likely wouldn't have enough to fill a full master lease. PCM sends a third lease agreement along, which is far more reasonable. But I'm of belief that he sent this along so that when we come to a board like this, he'd be able to show, look, I was reasonable, and look, I showed you this, even though he knew that we would be unable to sign it at that level because we wouldn't be able to afford it as an organization anymore. So, originally we had about 45 to 50 members looking to live in, and it would have been about a little over $5,000 per member at that rate. But at this time, we only had 27. So, and he knew this, which is why he passed it then. So this new lease was $377 with 3% increase for 3 years. Reasonable and would have been accepted at the beginning, absolutely, with no questions. So eventually PCM agrees to send us individual leases for our members to live in for the 2020 to 2021 year for $7,000 per member. And they were tied to individual rooms rather than the whole master lease. So this was with the idea that we'd be able to talk through this as organizations and figure it out for the next year. So it was not until much progress was made until the next spring, in 2021 spring, where our nationals and our board of trustees were finally able to start kind of getting things going with them, but it did fall through. On April 9th, I received, which I was the president at this time, yes, I received an email saying that they would no longer be renting to us, nor allowing us to live there for that year. And then we went to a rezoning last year, and he stated that we abandoned the property, whereas I have the correspondence here, actually from Ryan Munden, who is here as well, saying that they were not looking to rent or sell to us at this time. And we haven't been able to get to the table with them since. I have all the documents if anyone would like to see them. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition?
Hello, my name is Ryan Buencamino. I currently preside at 501 North Russell Street, and I'm a full-time student at Purdue University. I'll be graduating in 2025. One of my main concerns about this property is that it only provides 6 parking spaces for what I believe is 80 dwelling units. When I saw this, forgive me if I'm wrong, but is this parking group 3 for residents in Tippecanoe County law? Because if it is, they require 0.75 parking spaces per resident, which means that Cates would have to provide, or PCM would have to provide 60 parking spots for the full occupancy. When I looked into Purdue University parking, spots A, B are only reserved for student workers, and spots C, which would be eligible for the PCM property groups, are near the co-rec and by a parking garage, which are each 5-10 minutes walk to the actual property. I just wanted to see if this would be addressed for the residents, because they can't get meal plans if they're not a part of Purdue residency, I believe. So they'd have to drive to get to their groceries. I just want to make sure this was addressed so that all the residents were able to get the proper care that they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Mr. Munden, would you like to respond?
With respect to the parking standards, since this is a PD, those parking standards are negotiated. It's not clear what the ATO's objection is to the project, other than that they feel like they were pushed out. In our opinion, that is not a legitimate reason to not approve this PD. And just to set the record straight, Mike Cates, the owner of PCM, is an ATO alum. The architect on our design team is an ATO alum. Jim Schreier, a founding member of Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier, is an ATO alum. So we're not outsiders. We are intimately familiar with the fraternity. This project members of our team lived in this property. If the goal is to preserve the historic building and preserve what is historically and colloquially referred to as the ATO house, this project accomplishes that. With respect to the treatment of ATO, I do have our own timeline. Our client bought this property in 2004 when the fraternity was in serious financial trouble. This property was at risk of foreclosure. Since our client purchased the property, they provided housing for ATO student members through the spring semester of 2020, which is 16 years. PCM did not evict and they did not run off ATO. The term of the most recent master lease began in 2017 and expired in July of 2020. ATO had an option to renew that master lease. They chose not to exercise that option. The property was and still is in need of significant repair. Following the last PD, I don't know if you're aware or not, but the property suffered significant vandalism. We're not sure who did it. We have suspicions. The police have suspicions, but the property is in desperate need of repair prior to that, and then after that, even more so. There was also a fire in the 1990s that was not adequately repaired, so the roof structure needs repaired, so the property is in financial trouble and has been for a while. Despite ATO's decision not to renew their master lease, PCM continued to make proposals to ATO for a new master lease. Because of these significant repairs, PCM proposed a 3% increase in rent from the prior master lease. That, as well as other proposals, were rejected. Eventually, for the 2021 academic year, PCM and ATO agreed to the individual student lease structure at a 23% reduction in rent from the prior year. In February of 21, PCM was informed by Purdue that a cease and desist order had been issued to ATO, and they were ordered to stop all organizational activities and operations. That little piece was conveniently omitted. Since then, ATO has moved to 501 North Russell Street and has incorporated letters and other architectural items that PCM permitted ATO to take from this property and incorporate into their new house. PCM saved the building for ATO nearly 20 years ago and allowed them to continue occupying it for 16 years, and at times taking significant financial hits in order to do so. If ATO's objection is that they want to save the building, as I said, this adaptive reuse project accomplishes that. It's unfair, the treatment that PCM and Mike Cates personally have received from ATO. The timelines and the facts are distorted, misrepresented, and certain things conveniently omitted. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay.
I appreciate all the work and collaboration that went into this, and I do think it's a really cool project, but I am a little bit concerned that there's potentially zero parking for the size of it. Is that something that do we have other examples of doing that for something of this scale in this area?
Nothing quite like this. The other adaptive reuse project is much, much smaller. It's a new Chauncey on Vine Street. It was the fourplex project, so it's not really an equivalency. We just don't have too many of these under our belt so far. So this one is breaking slightly new ground. We have in the past, for the purposes of historic preservation, zeroed out parking. There were variances granted for, oh my goodness, I forget the name of the building now. One of the historic buildings in the village, dating from the late 1800s. It was built before the age of the automobile, so there was no parking available. So in order so that the building could be used, we promoted the idea of zero parking for the sake of preserving the structure. So we sort of use that philosophy with this project as well, that obviously it's a mansion set way back from the street, so it has no urban disposition, but that's its historic, that's how it was built, and that's where it was built. And so there really was just no room to put any parking. So given its location and the drive to want to preserve the building, staff was jointly comfortable with the idea of a zero parking standard.
Any other questions? If not, you have a yellow ballot.
We have a unanimous ballot recommending approval.
Thank you, Ryan.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2885, Shane Albrecht's R1 to R1B.
A second. Good evening, David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission, presenting Z 2885 from petitioner Shane Albrecht, along with co-owner Chris Tabor, requesting a rezoning of a lot in the unincorporated town of Stockwell from current R1 to R1B. R1 is our low-density, single-family dwelling district, and R1B is also single-family dwelling only, but it's a little bit denser. It's intended to provide for housing in small towns and urban neighborhoods where you have typically more compact development. So here you see the site, southwest corner on Church Street, in the southwest side of Stockwell. And then here is a closer view. This is 1.5 residential lots, essentially. You can see a third of the way from left to right, the thin line separating the site. You have a house developed on the east side of the rezoning lot, and then you can barely see the remnant foundation of a house that used to be there on the west side, or a structure. It could have been a garage. And the request here is to rezone to R1B in order to loosen standards, to be able to shift this dividing line about 20 feet to the east, so that you still have enough west setback to meet the zoning ordinance's requirements for this house's setback, yet make this lot buildable. This rezoning would be in keeping with the current zoning on the site. This is all R1B to the right, to the north, and to the east. So this would essentially be just an extension, an expansion of that R1B district. And again, R1B is the most common residential district in Stockwell. So this is also keeping with the terms or the provisions of the Stockwell Town Plan, which was recently completed, which encouraged any residential development to be infill rather than to be new greenfield development, new periphery development around the outside of town, and this accomplishes that as well. This is already a platted lot with houses on both sides of it. So we are supportive of this request to rezone from R1 to R1B, and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, David. Does the petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation?
Hello, I'm Shane Albrechts, and I'm just petitioning for the rezone of 1.5 residential lots from R1 to R1B, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions from the board? Anybody? Hearing none, you have a yellow ballot.
We have a unanimous ballot recommending approval.
Thank you.
I move to hear and vote on 2886 Tomish Developers LLC, NB to R3.
I second. Thank you. David Hiddlegen with the Area Plan Commission. Another rezoning case. This is a property east of State Road 231 and south of Veterans Memorial Parkway, so it's the southeast corner of that intersection. You see it on the site, on the map here in red. It is zoned NB for neighborhood business. It is currently unimproved, and it is surrounded to the north and south by R3 zoning, and the R3 to the north is improved with the Southern Winds apartment complex. The R3 to the south is unimproved. If this request is approved to rezone to R3, which is the multifamily district, this lot would be consolidated with the southern lot to allow for development of a new multifamily structure. You have floodplain zoning surrounding to the south and to the west and the east. However, this lot, there's plenty of it that's developable outside of that floodplain. It was rezoned to NB the same time that this property was rezoned to R3. It was in 1998. Neither one really took hold. There's not been any business development here. A lot of it has taken place, as you probably know, since then on Veterans Memorial Parkway to the east. The comprehensive plan dates back to 1981 here. It kind of recommends a mishmash of commercial, open space, and agriculture, very much before any of this southern development that's taken hold in the past 20-plus years was really contemplated. And so it doesn't give us too much advice for this site. Because it is surrounded by R3, we think that rezoning this to R3, which would make it consolidatable with this site and therefore buildable, is a reasonable thing to do. These are two very large thoroughfares, and you're not going to find single-family residential or any more sensitive uses likely to want to locate there. So multifamily is reasonable in staff size. We are supportive of this request and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. So petitioner or petitioner's representative wish to make a presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. Kevin Riley with Riley, Teeter and Schreier representing the petitioner. We agree with the staff's report. We agree that this is an appropriate zoning designation for this site and an appropriate proposed use for this site. We request your approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Kevin?
Yes.
Just for my clarification, you've got a strip that isn't included there. Is that the right-of-way?
It's either that or floodplain.
Okay, it doesn't show floodplain
You're talking
around
to
it. I'm on, along along Veterans Memorial and then along 231.
Right, that'd be right away then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
My name is Anthony Norfleet, and I agree.
Anyone else? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this petition? Any questions from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Two questions I have. You're talking about the city engineer's office offering sewer and water available in the area. Now, that area is quite a ways away, so that's the builder's responsibility to run water line to them, or have they discussed that with the city that we're going to run water to their property?
So I talked with the developer after we spoke.
Okay.
So there is sewer on site.
Right.
And it's my understanding that water is close. So we understand that if the water main, if it had to be extended, that would be at our
Yeah,
cost.
I mean, it's close, but it's quite a ways away also. Okay. The other one is these market rate apartments?
They are, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No other questions? You have a yellow ballot.
Unanimous ballot recommending approval.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2888 Trinitas Development LLC, I3 to R3.
I second. Thank you. David Hiddle again, with the Area Plan Commission. This is a rezoning, proposed rezoning of just under 23 acres on the south side of River Road, pretty much equidistant between the Purdue Airport and the Wabash River. Purdue Airport you can see there to the north. Property is zoned I3, that's an industrial category, and it has floodplain zoning to the south. It's kind of nestled into the contour of the floodplain zoning. More industrial zoning to the north and to the west, and then a bit of agricultural zoning to the west and R1 to the east. You have the town of Shadeland on the other side of the river, and then as you see here, the city of West Lafayette. We got to get a new mouse. Oh, we got to get a new operator then. Thank you. This is kind of all over the place. Okay. In this graphic, you see that it's also nestled to the west and to the north by the city of West Lafayette. So this is sort of a swoosh of county jurisdiction between West Lafayette and the Wabash River. And again, you have Shadeland, the incorporated town of Shadeland to the south, further to the south. Topographically, here you have south of this site, floodplain and agricultural uses. Pretty much all you can have because of the presence of the floodplain. It's not developable. You have mostly Purdue-owned territory to the north, including this property here, and it's used for conservation, for open space, for various conservation uses. I think their Trap-In Skeet Club has a facility to the north. And then you have low-density residential along River Road, mostly lots that access River Road directly rather than minor subdivisions that go off on their own private roads. And that's been the case for a while, that kind of development. The property itself is unimproved. It had been mined. This is kind of a residual gathering of water on the southeast corner, and then most of the rest of this is just scrub trees that have developed over the years. The petitioner proposes, by rezoning to R3, a multifamily development of some sort. This is all conceptual. You're only going to be voting on the R3 request. You're not voting on any any particular plans, that would all come later, and it's kind of up to their designs as to what this would actually look like. But they've offered one potential scenario where you have a variety of, I believe, duplexes and maybe single-family dwellings and 3 or 4 plexes, a larger multifamily development at the back, and then smaller multifamily developments along this side. And then they also provided some conceptual elevations. Again, these are not up for vote, and they're not anything that they're pledging to, but these are potential means or manners by which the site could be developed. So let's take a quick look at the history of the property. This is it in 1957. So you have the airport's to the north. It's a different runway configuration. It's much smaller. Obviously, you have the floodplain and the river very much in the same course it's always been in. You have the development of the single-family dwellings to the west. Many of them were built before 1957. A few were built after 1957, but you can see them kind of gathering steam over there. And if we shoot forward 40 years, this is kind of in the throes of heavy mining of the area. And then you have the built-out area of single-family dwellings over here, still the floodplain. And then if we come to 2010, the subject site is surrounded in red. The mining's done, and it's been left to grow back, without any man-made improvements since then. So the area is pretty pastoral. It's pretty horizontal, open, pretty natural. In fact, River Road is a scenic byway. It doesn't carry much restriction with regards to that status, other than to not allow billboards, but it is a scenic byway. And again, you can see that the uses have not changed much since the mining has ceased. You have conservation and open space, mostly related to Purdue to the north. Then you have the residential to the west, floodplain and agriculture to the south. And today, pretty much the same. This is a very pulled back view. If you can follow the hand, you see the river down here, and then this is 231, and then splitting off of it here is 26. And so what I'm trying to show here is that there is no major subdivision, no major residential development anywhere in this area between State Road 26, 231, and the river. There are individual houses on septic. There are some minor subdivisions, but there is no major residential development in this area. So here's the subject site. If this were to be developed thusly, it would be the first of its kind in this area ever. The reason for that, you probably know, is because this is where the nearest sewer is, and then this is where the subject site is. So in order to develop it as they propose, they would have to be able to route sewer to the property, which would kind of open up a new precedent for development for this area. The plan in place is the 1981 comprehensive plan again, and it recommends agricultural. The white is an agricultural recommendation right here for this property. It's 42 years old, but it is the adopted comprehensive plan, so it is the document by state law that decision makers are obligated to pay reasonable regard to. I will note that, I think you're aware of this, we are working on an update with stakeholders in the area of a new comprehensive plan for both Tippecanoe and Wabash townships. And our position in this case is that this should not go forward until that plan is done. With that plan, then these larger issues as to whether or not development should be opened up in this area, which is a pretty high stakes and important issue, can be fully vetted with all pertinent checkpoint agencies and stakeholders and area residents and other people who are interested and concerned with this area. To do it today would be before this planning effort is completed, and it's the planning effort that really guides development and growth in the county. And so our position is that this should not go forward. If it goes forward, it should be denied until, and then this kind of thing can be reviewed more appropriately once our new freshly vetted, publicly vetted plan is in place. There are a variety of other concerns too. This is River Road looking east toward the intersection with 231. So it's a two-lane, relatively lightly traveled road. Certainly no accommodation for bicycles or pedestrians. You would bet that there would be a pretty significant student presence on any multifamily property built here, and the road is pretty hostile towards pedestrians and towards bicyclists. We don't really want Purdue students to be located in areas where they can't walk or bike to campus. This is a pretty far-flung, I think, effort to try to do that here, where every trip to and from campus would require a vehicle. There's also no bus service here. The road is just not equipped. These are the kinds of things that you look at and analyze when you do planning projects. It's a 24-foot pavement width. It's a 40-foot right-of-way. It's got swales on both sides. The intersection with River Road and 231 is downright hostile towards pedestrians and bicyclists. So the road is in many ways not appropriate for this particular development. So we're not supportive of this. There's simply nothing in our planning canon that says we should be. So we're recommending denial for these reasons. The request is not congruent with the existing comprehensive plan. It precedes the completion of the comprehensive plan update, so in that sense we think that this project being brought forward for rezoning is premature, especially with no plans, nothing but the R3 request, which allows for carte blanche, pretty dense multifamily development. It would represent a jarring departure from the area's current and historic characteristics, again, open space, natural, low-density single-family dwellings, conservation, floodplain, river, agricultural, and then potentially a very dense multifamily development would not be in keeping with that. And of course, the roadway is very ill-equipped for the proposed development, especially with regard to pedestrian and bicycle travel. So, with that, we are recommending denial and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
We also have 3 letters, 1 for and 2 against, whenever you'd like to hear them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tittle.
Thank you.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Oh, I'm sorry, the petitioner. We skipped right over you. Yeah, well, same thing. Yeah.
Ryan Munden, Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier here on behalf of the petitioner, Trinitas Development, LLC. We agree with Mr. Hiddle that this is a unique property. We believe because it's unique, it will offer a unique housing option that will be highly sought after. I don't think it's disputed that Tippecanoe County is in dire need of additional housing. Each year, my office gets an annual report from Coldwell Banker Shook, and their last observation from the last iteration of this that we received is that there is a storm cloud on the horizon as a result of the rapid depletion of available housing stock in Tippecanoe County. So I understand that a comprehensive plan is being talked about and considered, and that's fine, but I don't know that we have the time to wait for that storm cloud to arrive. We need housing, we need housing now. With respect to traffic, we just received our traffic study. It did not account for the fact that we will be offering shuttle service to downtown as well as Purdue, which will alleviate some of those concerns about bikes and pedestrian traffic, as well as students driving to campus. And in that traffic study, it indicated that the intersection at 231 and River Road is adequately designed for increase in traffic. It recommended no modifications to the 231 signal and indicated that it will not impact the functionality of that intersection. With respect to the scenic byway, this project, again, right now just in conceptual phase, but would include flats, which would be apartments, the duplex option, as well as the single family. The property, the topography drops off significantly from River Road. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're 10 feet difference from the back of the property to River Road. And the layout is intentional with that in mind, that the higher buildings would be further back on the property so that they would be less visible from River Road, and the single family would be closer to the road, so the visual impact would be mitigated based on that topography and layout. With respect to the current condition, it is I3. So with respect to green space and that kind of thing, a much more intense use is available by right than R3. And again, I think an R3 option here provides something unique that we don't currently have in Tippecanoe County. With respect to utilities, I know in the staff's report there were concerns by West Lafayette regarding long-term maintenance of utilities for the project. Indiana American Water would be providing water. The water main extension would be turned over to and accepted by Indiana American Water for maintenance moving forward, so that would not be a West Lafayette responsibility. With respect to sewer, the developer would build a private lift station on site with a private force main, which would outlet to the existing city system. This will be a private lift station, private force main. We are not extending public city sewer, public water or city sewer for this project. This would all be private. So concerns about future maintenance of that would all be on the owner of the system, and the owner would not be West Lafayette. And because it's private, that would not open up the ability for future tie-ins for that private force main. Our client's excited about the opportunity here. We have spent significant time with Tom Murtaugh. Our understanding is the county's supportive of this project. Again, we're in a conceptual phase, but we've shared some renderings and site plans just to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. But in terms of waiting right now, I don't think we can afford to wait to provide more housing for our community. With that, we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Now, anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Little FYI, the letters are being circulated.
Yes,
So
letters
watch for them.
are going around.
Hello, my name's Mike Rockstro. I live at 2544 South River Road. My wife and I have lived out there about 25 years. My wife worked at Purdue, and I worked locally also. And we're opposed to this because we moved out there because we wanted to live in the country and be in an area where it's not multi-housing and everything. I thought originally from the little information we'd gotten that this was only going to be an apartment complex. Now that I see it could even be more, that even upsets me even more. I was going to address a little bit on utilities, but that's been addressed to some extent now, that it's going to be handled privately, because that was a concern. I couldn't figure out how they thought they were going to take care of a septic system out there for multi-housing and all in such a small area, but that's another story. We enjoy the area out there as single families and everything that way, and I think the travel would also be prohibited. I can't imagine adding extra traffic out there. We've already got enough as it is that utilizes it. The road's not in that good a shape. It gets tore up every year and has to be patched. And I think that's one more thing, that something would have to be done to improve that for such a housing project. The Purdue Farms on the south side, I think Purdue ought to just buy this land and be done with it. I can't believe they haven't stepped forward and done something about it. I'm hoping they do. That'd be the best bet for everybody, since they own everything else around it and all. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Bruins. I live at 2219 South River Road in West Lafayette. This is my third house on South River Road because I know what a gem of Tippecanoe County South River Road is. As you approach there, you go through a corridor of trees and natural landscape. This complex would be entirely inconsistent with the layout of the current area. So I respectfully ask that you vote no against this. And out of curiosity, would you please stand if you're against this motion and you attended today? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Shannon Edwards. I live at 214 Spring Valley Lane in West Lafayette. I really don't have a lot of additional information to add other than I'm willing to put my name in as opposed to this. This will destroy basically the scenic and the neighborhood that I live in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Nathan Gray. I live at 713 Appaloosa Trail in West Lafayette. I'm the Director of Site Services for Evonik. I'm here representing Evonik at Tippecanoe Labs to speak against the rezoning. Evonik owns a property along both the north and south banks of the Wabash River, including adjacent lots to the south of this property, and directly across from this property is our main operation production site. It employs over 650 people directly across from this on the riverside, on the south side. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we've been part of this community, the Lafayette business community, for over 70 years. We have several concerns about the proposed R3 rezoning. On the north side of Wabash, we operate several freshwater wells on Evonik property, again, along the north shore of Wabash. This also provides us an industrial buffer for our everyday occurrences for our main site. The main site is on the south side, directly across from this potential change. Manufacturer buildings are only about 8 city blocks away from this property, so 8 city blocks from the edge of their property to an operating production facility is what we're talking about. We make pharmaceuticals. These buildings are running large equipment. They generate lots of equipment noises that can be heard from the proposed property. To keep our people safe, we also, of course, have well-lit area of our production. This pushes ambient light across the river, so there is a glow all on this property. Also directly across from this property is our very large biological wastewater treatment facility. So these are all on the south side, but directly across from this property. So our concern that the residents of this R3 zoned area will feel that these noises, these lights, and potential odors from the manufacturing site are infringing on them. This will lead to criticism of Evonik and have a negative impact on Evonik's standing in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Margaret Warren, and I live at 1191 South Sharon Chapel Road. My main concern, well, I have several concerns, but how will this affect our wells? Because all of us have well water, and, if they put, multi-residential into that area, how does that affect our well? And the added traffic, because there is already a lot of traffic, and people do ride bicycles, and it's dangerous, just because it's a two-way single, it's narrow, and so it's hard when people are riding bikes. Those are my main concerns.
Thank you.
I'm Brandon Stevens. I live at 101 Patrick Lane, and just down the road from this development, or proposed development and rezoning. And as the director over here stated that they are against it, I'm also against it. It's not set up in that area to support that type of housing development. The designer here of this says that they're going to put in lift stations to do their own sewer treatment and pump that to the city. So they've got to get it somewhere, so they've got to run pipes down the road and across other people's property to get it there. It's not going to be wireless. You can't pump sewer across the air. Also, they have promised to do transportation, and as we know, other facilities around the city have done this, and after it gets very expensive, they stop and discontinue the service, and then those residents are on their own to get their own transportation. So there's no guarantee that they're going to provide that transportation for the next 50 years for those residents to be able to reduce the traffic or keep the traffic in check on that area. So, and again, it is a very dangerous area out there with the road being narrow and all this increased traffic, especially with students probably wanting to live out there in those areas with that high-density housing and single-family homes with the multi-family homes in that area would not be a good mix together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Stephen Johnson. I'm a resident of 4344 South River Road. My family and I left the big city of Indianapolis to move to West Lafayette for the scenic area in which South River Road provides us. It is a safe area. Currently, the citizens that live there on South River Road, we are concerned what a rezoning of the area will do for crime, let alone the increased traffic that it's going to bring to the area, which has already been mentioned. And I also agree with not moving forward with this project in reference to the industrial buffer that was mentioned earlier. Let alone, we do not believe that this planning, the critical thinking of this planning was not met with the strategic strategy needed to support the rezoning. So therefore, myself and the other residents, if you will please stand with me, are against moving forward with this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Rebuttal.
First, with respect to Evonik's objection, if we understand the objection correctly, they're concerned that their use across the river will be a nuisance to this property owner if this project moves forward, and concerned about complaints. We recognize that they were here before us. We have vetted this property and are familiar with the current conditions and attributes of neighboring and adjacent properties across the river, and are comfortable with the conditions and are not concerned that there will be any negative impact on our property. But again, we have no intentions of being anything other than a good neighbor in recognition of Evonik's history here. I would also like to reiterate that the concerns regarding the residential uses along River Road, this is zoned for heavy industrial. So in our opinion, even our R3 mix of different types of residential uses are significantly less impactful on the scenic nature of South River Road, traffic, et cetera, than what a heavy industrial use would be. Significantly less impactful. And then with respect to the comment regarding impacts on existing wells out there, since this is Indian American water, there would be no new well tapped on this property that would cause any issues for existing wells. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question for developer. I understand private lift station, but still tapping into city services for sewer. Have you had conversations with the city of West Lafayette on that?
The developer and their engineers, Kimley Horn, have had conversations with the city and with Indiana American Water about utilities, yes.
And the city's willing to provide that service?
Josh? Yes. You want to talk about your conversations with the city?
I can, yes.
Josh Nixon, civil engineer, Kimley Horn and Associates. Live at 2172 Foxmore Lane, Lafayette. We did have a meeting, as was alluded to, with Dave Henderson, Vic Van Allen, with the city, Ben Anderson as well. Specifically spoke to the plan for running a small, size to be determined force main up River Road and tie into an existing manhole that is located on the north side of River Road, part of the Western Interceptor. So they were receptive to that and asked for a couple of things when we got to the final design, and that was the extent.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just to be clear, this is entirely in the county? Was there some talk about part of it's in the city, parts in the county? But it's all in the county? Yes. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
It's up to you. You didn't use all
Go
the
ahead.
time.
Go ahead.
Since this is in the county, and they're tapping into city sewer, is that a allowed tap into the sewer? And I know they've had conversations, but this is in the county, so it's not a city property there.
If the city agrees to it, yes. Anything else? Okay, you have a yellow ballot.
Letters will pass. Yes. Thank you. I think it's going.
Well, give me a minute to get out.
Okay. All right, for Archview, right?
For Archview, yeah.
Okay.
Is the right one?
We have 11 votes recommending against the petition and 5 votes recommending for the petition. So that negative recommendation will continue to the county commissioners next month.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I have a conflict on the next case.
Okay, let the record show that Mr. Schroeder has recused himself. And I will take the next motion.
I move to hear and vote on Z 2889 Archview Properties, LLC R1 to R3.
I second.
We'll be hearing Archview Properties, which is a request from R1 to R3 for 26 acres on the north side of West Lafayette, just outside of city limits. This actually borders, the southern border of this request is inside, or at the city limits of West Lafayette. On the western side of the property will be the Yeager Road reconstruction, which will go north with the realignment. According to the county highway, that should be completed by the end of the year. Fingers crossed. Two years. End of 2 years.
He didn't say what year.
So we can see here the surrounding properties are currently primarily row crop with some adjacent zoning of OR, R2, I3, which is all land that is owned by PRF. And then the city limits here, the Arbor Chase subdivision that we heard earlier in the meeting is just east of the map. let's see, do we have it farther out? No. And then this northern property would be where that new east-west collector would be constructed, potentially as part of this subdivision, which would be discussed at the subdivision stage of this rezone. And then the petitioner has some non-binding conceptual site plans here that show, again, a conceptual layout with conceptual drawings. And staff is recommending denial with a similar recommendation as in the previous case, which this is in the Wabash Township study area, which again will be hopefully completed later this year. The only thing staff can say is this area is identified as potential residential expansion growth. Again, that plan's from 1981, and it doesn't really define what that means. And hopefully when the plan is done, we'll have a clear understanding of what kind of density that would be, and then we can make a more complete recommendation. Until that time happens, we're recommending denial.
Okay. Thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative, please.
Ryan Munden, Reiling, Teeter, and Schreier. Here on behalf of the petitioner, Archview Properties, LLC. If approved, Archview plans to develop this site into a multifamily apartment project. It will not be marketed as student housing. I would just reiterate my comments that I made with respect to the Trinitas project, that we are in dire need of housing and waiting for comprehensive plans to be complete next year is not sufficient to address the needs that we have currently. This would be an upscale project. We believe, given the fact that this is designated for residential, that it would be appropriate here. We have had a number of meetings with the county and understand that the county supports this rezone and this conceptual project at this point. Utilities to the site would be Indiana American Water and American Suburban Sewer. So we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval, and we would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Questions from the board?
I do not have a question, but just a comment to reiterate what was said by petitioner, that we have heard a lot. One of the biggest issues this community is facing is housing, and I think that I think we need to move forward with not only this project but the project that we're going to be hearing next, to get these projects going to help with the housing needs in the county. So I'm going to be supportive of the projects.
Okay. Anything else?
Question of petitioner.
Go ahead.
Larry. Same question we had earlier on the city services for sewer. Has been discussions. I understand it's outside the city, but I'm assuming relying on city services or no? American Suburban?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm curious about this one and the next one, just in regards to the 231 corridor change. Is that going to, I thought...
Yeah, I don't think it would impact this area.
Okay. I thought at one time it was going to be, so, okay.
No, that project is now being discussed again, but it would not be in this particular location.
Anything else? Okay, you have a yellow ballot.
Okay, we have 12 votes recommending approval, 3 votes recommending denial. So that approval recommendation should carry on to the county commissioners.
Thank you. Would someone bring Gary back in, wherever he went? Tell him he can return. You're on. Buckingham.
Thank you. I move to hear and vote on Z 2890, Buckingham Properties LLC, R1 to R3.
I second.
Again, this property is a request from R1 to R3 on 22 acres for multifamily housing. It's just northwest of the previous case. There is a letter circulating that was received after the staff reports went out, so this should be circulating against this request. We can see here this also borders the proposed Yeager Road extension. It's surrounded by all agricultural land use, row crop property. Again, it's part of the expansion area that's identified in the 81 comprehensive plan. What the residential expansion is not clear in the 81 plan. Again, we'll get a better understanding of that when the plan is done. Petitioner has submitted a conceptual plan. Petitioner had previously engaged with Plan Commission working on a plan development concept, which the plan development process does provide a little bit more ability to negotiate infrastructure, which was why at the time staff was comfortable entering that process, just to verify that the infrastructure that would be put in as with the larger plan. But again, until this plan is done, staff is in favor of continuing or recommending against these, just to keep in line with completion of the plan.
Thank you. Petitioner or petitioner's representative.
Ryan Munden, Riley, Teeter, and Schreier, here on behalf of the petitioner, Buckingham Properties LLC. If approved, Buckingham would plan to develop this site in a multi-family apartment project. As you can see from the elevations, this would be an upscale development with high-end finishes and amenities. Again, not to beat a dead horse, but we need housing. This would help solve that problem. This particular developer has had successful projects in Tippecanoe County. They developed the Century at Purdue Research Park, which is complete in 2020. So they are a known commodity. This will not be marketed as student housing. Again, we have had numerous meetings with the county and understand that they support this project and rezone. Given the current zoning and old comprehensive plan, residential is appropriate here. There would be, I understand from letters that traffic was a concern. There would be 2 entrances, one off of, if I can navigate this without, there would be an entrance off of the new Yeager Road extension as well as the existing county road to the south. I know there are concerns about the condition of that current county road. The developer would widen and improve that county road up to their entrance, so increase in traffic would not further deteriorate the road given that improvement and that widening there. So we are taking that into account. In addition, with respect to just a change in use here from R1 to R3, there is the I3 and the OR and the R2 to the south owned by PRF. So, I mean, this is a area that is ripe for redevelopment. And again, we believe that this type of upscale project fits perfectly here. So we would respectfully request your recommendation of approval and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this petition?
Good evening. My name is Kent Parkinson. I live at 5516 West 1200 South in Brookston, Indiana. I've been a resident of this part of the state my entire life. The property here is owned by the Parkinson Family Trust, and I represent 2/3 of the beneficiary of that trust who support this plan. As you've heard before, Buckingham is a known entity. They are well known for developing good high-end projects. As you heard earlier, there is definitely a need for additional housing, good quality housing, in the West Lafayette and Tippecanoe County area. And while I farmed this with my family when I was a young man, and it's a very nice piece of property that's gently rolling, I recognize that things must come to an end at times and move on, and the community needs to grow. So on behalf of the 2/3 majority of the beneficiaries of the trust that owns this property, we're very proud of what Buckingham has done here, and we'd ask the board to approve this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Any questions from the board? You have the ballot you've been looking for all evening.
Oh, my gosh, yes. And we'll put these up there.
That's fine. You're good. You're good.
So this is done.
I know. It's an import.
No administrative. Or wait, administrative. Yes, 3.
We have 13 votes recommending approval and 3 votes recommending against. So that recommendation of approval will carry on to the commissioners.
Thank you, Ryan. Any administrative matters from Mr. Hiddle?
Thank you. I'd just like to acknowledge Dr. Gary Steinhardt and his Purdue University agronomy class with us throughout the entirety of the evening. And I think they're coming next week to the BZA hearing as well. I believe that they may want to stop by afterwards and ask questions of all of the exciting things that they've heard this evening. So if anybody up on the Plant Commission is interested in...
Dr. Steinhardt, would you like to say anything?
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to have...
If you would come up, please.
Pardon me, I'm Gary Steinhardt. I live at 2602 Nottingham Place in West Lafayette. I teach a soils and land use class. And this is a great exercise in decision-making and advice from the public to the elected officials. So I do appreciate this, and I want to extend my thanks to you folks who are willing to do things and take a lot of abuse and not get paid for it. That's tremendous, and I do want to introduce you to my students, if you have a few moments, to stick around and just visit with them a little bit. they really, in their process of education, have not been, in my judgment, sufficiently introduced to this part of government. And it's very important because it's where we live. And the decisions you folks make have a huge impact on what our community looks like. And, you know, I remarked to the folks coming down here that many cities in Indiana would give their eye teeth to have as much going on downtown. We didn't find a place to pull off, so it's wonderful. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that groups like this and people, citizens like this, are willing to extend themselves and help their community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Steinhardt. And many of us have been here over the years and had your class here before and appreciate the fact that you bring them and expose them to government and at the local, very local level. Thank you. Any other administrative matters? No? Okay. We don't have anything, no May Executive Committee agenda items yet. Determination of variances.
I move that the following requests for variance from the Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. BZA 2101, Anthony Hahn. BZA 2102, Keith Moore, Carlson Consulting Engineers, and BZA 2103, Built to Last.
I second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Director's report.
Thank you. The director's report was distributed yesterday via email. I don't have anything to add to it, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any citizens' comments? You have one?
I have one.
All right. Mr. Schroeder.
As I was out roaming the hallway, someone approached me, a petitioner, who was late for their case because the notice for public hearing states the time in the meetings is 7 p.m. And it may be just an old template we're using, but hopefully he felt bad that he was not here and someone else had to fill in for him. And I see mine says 7, so I'm sure we can get that fixed.
That is
Thank
true.
you. Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Schroeder.
Move to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
That's a hearty gallon.
That is a hearty gallon.